I want to talk about a pet project I'm doing during lunch breaks. It's called SpeedLazer. It's still a working title. No better titles yet. So I want to talk a bit about why I want to develop a game and how I approached it and the results so far. So there will be an interactive part with gameplay. So a long time ago I started developing because I was really fascinated by computers. My father got a computer from his work for a PC at home project, so that they learned to work with computers at home and they were more efficient at work. It was an XT 9.8 megahertz CGA screen, monochrome, so the games looked a bit like here on the screen. And it was awesome when we got it, but we got it a long time. So the rest of the world was already moving on and having VGA screens and hard drives and whatnot, and we were still using boot floppies. So yeah, when I got more invested in hey, I want to play other games, yeah, they did not work, or you had to really do some weird configuration. And yeah, I started actually to try to learn to program. There was no internet back then, so it was from books and things my father taught me. And I started creating games in GW Basic, so it's with line numbers and everything. I even have stuff recorded from that time, so actually pixel by pixel drawn animation stuff. And actually since then I was still trying to create games, and it's what really got me into programming. In the time I learned more languages, and every time I was just trying to build games with it. So I went from GW Basic to Q Basic to Quick Basic, Turbo Pascal, and every time I tried building games with it. And then even at a school project later on, trying to build something. And well, most of the later efforts were actually web-based, but none of them were playable. Some was just back-end stuff, or generating level stuff, or whatever. So yeah, we're not going to watch the whole thing. It's on YouTube, so you can watch it later on if you want. So game development effort was going on throughout my learning to program phase. But it stalled a bit in the last years. So yeah, this year I really had to. I want to create a game again and get more of it working, and actually gameplay, etc. Also because it was the thing that got me to programming and into this profession in the first place. And for me, creating a game was always something ultimate to do with your computer, because you had to do graphics, you had to do gameplay mechanics, sound, music, everything, story, and that combined in one package. And well, the years go by, and I'm building web applications on a professional level and not doing games anymore. So I really wanted to get back to that, because even if you're wearing this, inside me is still the boy wanting to play games and create a game. So the thing is, now you have a family and everything, and yeah, work days go by, and in the evenings you're taking care of your family, and you're not doing anything with games anymore. So I figured, okay, I could use my Kabisa time at lunch breaks to actually start building something. And there are some good things and bad things about it. The good thing is, yeah, every day at work you have a lunch break, so you have 5 moments each week to add something to the whole. And yeah, it also limits the amount of things you can do, because yeah, you have a short amount of time, so you really have to plan ahead. Okay, how do I make this half an hour as productive as possible? So yeah, you're really trying to plan ahead, add something cool that's short to build or short to refactor, and build in that way. And you're not planning ahead too far, it's just the next lunch break. It also has some downsides, because if you're struggling with a bigger problem, yeah, it sometimes takes multiple days to get to the bottom of it and to fix it. So yeah, it's also still a challenge to stay motivated at times, especially in the early parts of development when you have not really something you can play with yet. So what I did is actually create a playlist on Spotify with music that somehow in my head reminds me of old games or the game I'm building now. And I listen to it in the car, so I get in the car and sort of mindset, and I use it to plan the lunch breaks. And I do also a lot of reading into making games or the genre I'm working in, also to get ideas of things to improve or things that are not working right, and how to find out where the problem is. And yeah, what really helps is to make it playable as soon as possible and just play your own game. And then yeah, my backlog is mainly orchestrated by actually 2 aspects. One thing I really find cool to add, or one thing that really frustrates me and I want to fix. So I also have yeah, drawn inspiration. This is actually the same game as in the previous screenshot, only with color as it was intended. There are some games that influenced me and why I find some aspects really awesome. One is Unreal, it's 1998. It really was able to set a grand atmosphere using generated fire, water, interactive music that changed when enemies encountered you, sound with echo effects when you entered caves, etc. It was really ahead of its time, colored lighting. And also the games I used to play in the, when I was young. Rayman Legends is also something from last year, I think. It was a really awesome game because it really looks sprite-based or 3D, I don't know. It looks awesome, and it has really smart ways to randomly generate levels that I found really cool. And yeah, the toys I played with in my youth and still collect is Lego Space. It has some really awesome crafts and stuff and things that makes you fantasize about futuristic settings, etc. And so I started this project in May 11th, was my first commit. It was a README, and then the whole month of nothingness. And then at the end of May, Kung Fury came out on the internet. Yeah, it was also a really awesome movie about the 80s and a guy that really pushed himself to create the whole movie almost by himself. So yeah, that inspired me to really get into hacking time and start building. So yeah, I want to show you a bit of how I started the build process, and yeah, where I am today. So some things I really wanted to do was one, make it web-based, and I built this in Crafty. That's a small framework to get you going in creating games, and I really wanted to use the controller because it has more game feeling that way instead of keyboard. So yeah, you start with a blank canvas, and then first thing I created was small steps. So it was a red square, and you could make it move using the controller. Later on I added that it really was the analog control, so that small motions and big motions made a difference. The next step for me was add shooting. So you press the fire button and little squares came out and just traveled. And then you have need something to shoot at. So the next step was create an enemy, the famous blue square that you can kill by shooting twice, and it just disappeared. And then I really had, I have gameplay, I can move, I can shoot, there's a target. So I was really happy about the first result, and I wanted to show my son, that's 4 years old, so, hey, your daddy's making a game, and he tried it, and he shoot the enemy, and then, it just ended there. And my wife said, okay, why don't you just add some for loop and have some more enemies, and then you can at least play a bit more together. My goal also was to have a two-player game. So when the enemies came, you can pick them off. They're not really a threat at the moment, but now you can at least play with with two people and have some fun. But they're not really a threat, so you're getting boring pretty quickly. But at least there was some gameplay. So the next step for me was to add level geometry that you can really actually flesh out something you have to fly through. And there's some collision detection going on. And after the scrolling part working, it's also a decision process of will it be vertical scrolling or horizontal scrolling. And I figured when I do it horizontally, I have more, I can easier add scenery and make it more graphical and set more atmosphere that way. And well, this is not really that hard, but you can speed it up and then we die. Because you get squashed out of the screen, because you really have to stay into the screen. And the next step was for me to get a sense of depth. So I wanted to add backgrounds that had a different speed setting than the foreground, so that you can create some depth. These are in the background, there's no collision there. And they really pass each other at the center of the screen to get some depth going on. I changed some Z index wrongly in the previous play, so and now I had backgrounds, I had geometry, motion, enemies, and next thing I wanted to add was storytelling. So I added a small system to add text boxes in the bottom of the screen, so that you can add some flavor text and do some storytelling. And when you add it all together, well, you can get something going on like, we're under attack, but we were still having these old enemies, so that's a bit underwhelming experience. So by playing a lot, where's the problem? It's the enemies, so we have to change that. So the next step was, we make them move a bit more, so that you have more of a threat. and they are harder to shoot at, because now you just stay at the same position and you can just pick them off one by one. So these are a bit harder to target. And then okay, I got some geography components in there. I got more and more stuff was starting to work, and I made a document creating some storyline about how I wanted the game to be, like what would stage 1 be, what will stage 2 be, and yeah, I wanted the game to start at sea. You go into a city, and then stuff goes to hell, and in the end you just go to space, and yeah, have the space adventure with your craft. So I started building the first section, and that was just the ocean. Think, okay, that's easy, just some blue blocks, and then you have an ocean with some clouds above it. But in my storyline, eventually I wanted to go to space. And in the traditional sense, normally the games have stage 1, loading screen, stage 2. But yeah, I really wanted one big seamless experience, so that the level just keeps continuing on, and maybe some score screen appears for you're entering stage 2, but then you just continue playing. It's like a big streaming thing. So that required me to have upwards motion as well to get to space. So the same mechanic I used for the parallax backgrounds, I used for the vertical motion, so that you get the sense of, okay, we're flying upwards, and we're actually above the clouds, and yeah, pull it even further into space. And well, the enemies got expanded as well with Bezier curves, so that they have more fluent motion. I added small explosions, also with blocks, and when you kill the last enemy, power-ups appeared, and you eventually get weapons. So yeah, each lunch break every time adds a small part again. So I want the weapon as well, so I just wait for some enemies. So I was pretty happy at the result for this at the moment. The way the game builds is I have these blocks of scenery that are just pasted behind each other, and yeah, they add more when the camera moves towards it, and they clean up when the camera has passed it. But the problem gameplay-wise was the enemies were also bound to this scenery. So every time when you shoot enemies, you have to wait to enter a new block to get new enemies. So yeah, the gameplay didn't feel right. You were constantly waiting, okay, what now? Ah, there are some enemies, you shoot them, and then you have to wait again. So that really got me back to the drawing board and remixed the entire way I tried to approach it, because I figured out, okay, it's not the scenery that's the content of the game, it's actually the enemies. So what I did is, when I define a level now, I define it based on enemies. And enemies now became promises in the game, and when they finish their geography or they get killed, they instantly resolve that promise and spawn the next thing in the chain. And yeah, that could be more enemies. And this way, yeah, you can really fill up the screen and have constant enemies. The nice thing about promises is also you can do stuff in sequence, you can do stuff in parallel, so you can really flesh out the content of how the level is made. And yeah, this really was an eye-opener for me. And I think, okay, now I'm really in control on how the level is staged. And I actually wanted the same thing for the enemies as well. So the way I could now direct the content of the level, I also wanted to direct the enemy behavior this way. So that's also this scripting language I added for the level. I also added for the enemies. So this way you can really build stuff around enemy behavior and let them do whatever you want and take control about that as well. And the cool thing is you can even let them react to the environment, that when they they dip in, they water splashes appear. So now you could actually create all kinds of cool enemy AI level stuff. And the next thing was particle effects. So that's already in Crafty, but now the square explosions and water splashes got replaced by particle effects. So this is actually the version that's currently online and in the rec room with these particle effects and this enemy behavior. But of course, development hasn't stood still. So the next thing for me was to add graphics. So the game continues on and you stay alive.
Oops.
I lost my weapon. So I have to go for a power.
I'll help you. You can have mine.
And the scenery got a bit richer, the enemies got a bit richer, and now I even have graphical enemies that animate and little lights before they explode and nicer explosions with particles. And the game really becomes harder to play. So I was also wondering if this script language could create a boss fight, and that's multi-stage. In this demo, the multi-stage part is not that visible, but he drops mines that are seeking one of the players out, and he shoots rockets. Killed again. So.
Did you see what I did there?
I'm game over.
I'm using his own mines against him.
Ooh. So.
Ooh, rockets.
There. That's how far I got with the game. So I got scenery in and graphics in. Still trying to make the switch to WebGL. It's easy to do using Crafty, but there are some visual artifacts that I don't like that I still want to remove. But this is how far I got. A little surprise for Roel. He's back.
Getting my ass kicked in a video game is no surprise to me.
So, that's how far I got. Woo! So for me the really big game changer actually was having a higher level scripting language in there to take control, to give you as a content creator control in how stuff works. And it's actually based on a promises library, when.js, that I made some stuff for repeats and whiles, sequences in parallel already in there, and that can really create structures to direct the content of a level or the behavior of an enemy. So I have different modules in it. One is for the level. You can set scenery that changes. So when you have 3 enemy squads killed or whatever, you can say, okay, now change into a different set of scenery, and then the engine that adds blocks when the camera moves will start adding different blocks there and change the scenery around. You can place enemy squads and configure them, how many and how fast and whatever. The speed of the camera and the craft, you can even do that individually. Flying upwards, downwards, put some dialogue in there. Wait for scenery to be in screen or leave the screen or whatever, that you can also direct there from okay, now we're in the city, now do this. And that in combination with waiting in parallel and stuff is really powerful. And disable weapons and enable weapons so that the boss comes, you're not shooting already, just okay, disable the weapons now, show the dialogue. And there are also some commands for enemy behavior, like moving, picking a target, synchronize, that's really nice, that has, can have multiple enemies within the squad wait on each other, so that when they're all in place, that was the little dance sequence, they just all move randomly to a spot, and when they're all there, they continue with their geography. And you can have sequences bound that can, because you define the behavior in a sequence, and in this way you can switch that sequence on the fly. So when the boss has less than 50% health, he can, you can switch his behavior to more aggressive behavior, that sort of stuff. And you can place enemies in the background for animation, or have them fly from behind buildings and that sort of stuff, and then put them into the level. That's not in the demo, but it is in the game already. So this is a small code example of how stuff looks like in a level. So it's really, some sort of domain-specific language. You set some scenery, place some squad, and in parallel, when this one is either out of screen because his geography has ended or is killed, then the next step is executed. So this is some basic squad configuration, how many enemies will use this behavior, and they will spawn 1 second behind each other. When the last one is killed, you can drop something with an identifier, and the identifier is then specified, okay, what does it contain. And this, when you killed this one, the stalker, these two will come together at the same time, and when these are both killed or ended, the next step is executed. So in that way you can really have, like a script, define how the level is progressed. And the same goes for enemy behavior. This is actually the script for the little critter that's following you on the water and then jumps up at you. So you can just say, okay, pick one. You have some sort of jQuery selectors you can use to target components in the screen. You can pick a ship, and then he moves, just the first steps, he moves underwater out of the screen, and then he just moves to your location underwater, and then when he has done this 10 times, so it's following you around, and when he doesn't need to move, it's faster because the time of traveling is then not needed, and then he jumps out of the screen and hopefully hits you. The real script is a little bit longer because it has to warn you a bit to be able to dodge. So how far is the game really? Well, I'm now at the stage in drawing graphics and doing animations. Still need to be done there. In the level generating content, I have 50% of the first stage, so the first mid-stage boss fight is in there, but the second half of the first stage is still in progress, and I want 7 stages, so there's still a lot of work to do, but somehow it is still speeding up, so that's nice. And there's a lot of gameplay tuning that has to be done, like how power-ups work and secondary weapons work and super weapons will work and whatever, but that's the fun part for me in figuring that out. High scores is also something I really want, so you can compete with colleagues in who's the best, and sound effects and music. And for music I already know how I want to approach it technically, but it's not that high on my priority at the moment. So, I also learned some stuff, which is really, some were really eye-openers for me. That everything, because a game has really a lot of aspects to them, like gameplay mechanics, graphics, scenery, enemy behavior. Everything has its own set of rules you need to discover. If you take shooting, for example, okay, how fast should the player be able to shoot? How fast should the bullets move? How much damage should they do? You have to figure it out, okay, what works, what doesn't work. The same goes with enemy behavior. When they just fly in and kill you, yeah, it's not fun, so you have to give some fair warnings there and do some scripting. Also, when I started to add graphics, the colors of the city were so vibrant that it really distracted from the gameplay, that you couldn't really make out the enemies, so you have to also do some desaturation in background images to keep the player focused on what's happening in front of him. And yeah, it's really cool to learn all that sort of stuff. Also the pacing of how fast enemies get into screen, how much do you fill up the screen with enemies, and that sort of things. Also, yeah, now I have 4 lives, but normally you have 2. And yeah, people were complaining that every time you lose, you were game over. You had to start at the beginning again. So I added a checkpoint system that when you pass certain points, because it's all based on promises, you can also fast forward through them and let the game start halfway when you pass some sort of checkpoint. Yeah, and for me, what really was really cool was the LazerScript part, that you have low-level system components that you can take control of in a higher-level language. And what was really cool is that I also have LazerScript in my professional application at the moment to direct animations within the OSS tool. So that's actually directing how zooming in and turning on and off luminaires works is actually also done with LazerScript. So that was also really nice, and it's just super fun to yeah, create something out of nothing, especially when you add graphics. When you're in the drawing program, it's just a static image, and when you put it in the game, it really comes alive and starts to move and behave, and that's really awesome. It's all open source and on GitHub, so everybody can fork and shoot issues and add pull requests and play over there. And that's it. So, woo!